Unfortunately, I keep getting richer. Episode 4, The Most Expensive Explosion in China. Bai Lianhua lasted until 10:15 before doing something. This was, by her own standards, an achievement. She had eaten breakfast in the private kitchen at Qingshui Palace, refused 3 folders, ignored 2 telephone calls, and watched old Wu supervise the replacement of a cracked terrace tile without interfering. At 9:30, Chunmei found her sitting beside the lake with both hands folded in her lap. "What are you doing?" "Nothing." "You look uncomfortable." "Nothing requires concentration." Chunmei sat beside her. Across the water, construction workers moved between scaffolds. The eastern road had reached the palace gates. Every passing truck appeared to increase the property's value by several million yuan. "Are you thinking?" Chunmei asked. "That is still doing something." "So you're not thinking?" "I'm trying not to." A crane lifted a section of stone, balustrade into place. Lianhua watched it for 12 seconds. "How much did that cost?" Chunmei sighed. "You lasted longer than I expected." At 10, Zhou Ming arrived carrying no folders. Lianhua looked behind him. "Where are they?" "Where are what?" "The documents you brought to make me richer." "I brought none." "That is suspicious." "You requested a day without questions." "That was yesterday." "I have learned to respect your instructions cautiously." He joined them beside the lake. For 5 minutes, nobody spoke. Then a distant rumble crossed the sky. Lianhua looked up. A white trail appeared beyond the eastern hills, climbed sharply and vanished behind cloud. "What was that?" "A military aircraft, perhaps," Zhou said. The rumble deepened. A second later, something flashed orange beyond the hills. The sound arrived after it, a dull, enormous thump that disturbed the lake and sent birds out of the trees. Chunmei stood. Was that supposed to happen? Zhou took out his telephone. Lianhua watched the fading smoke. How expensive was it? Zhou stopped dialing. Whatever it was, she clarified. "I do not know." "It looked expensive." Old Wu emerged from the palace with one hand pressed to his ear. "The radio says a private rocket test failed at the long proving ground. Nobody was injured." Lianhua turned towards him. "A rocket?" "Yes, Miss Bai." "How much money disappears when a rocket explodes?" Old Wu looked at Zhou. Zhou looked at the smoke. Chunmei began laughing before either man answered. By 10:15, Bai Lianhua had abandoned doing nothing. The company was called Tianyuan Aerospace. Its headquarters occupied 3 concrete buildings on the edge of an industrial district 2 hours north of Jinhai. Its logo showed a silver arrow passing through a blue circle. One letter had fallen from the sign, leaving Tianyuan Aerospace above the gate. The guard recognized Zhou's car and opened the barrier before it stopped. "How did he know us?" Lianhua asked. "He knows Gu Corp vehicles," Zhou said. "You said Gu Corp had no involvement." "It does not." "Then why does he look relieved?" "Because companies near bankruptcy are often relieved when a large investor arrives." "I'm not investing." Zhou glanced at her. "You traveled 2 hours immediately after seeing an explosion." "I'm inspecting the remains." Chunmei leaned forward from the back seat. "You wore the expensive coat." "It was nearest the door." The guard saluted as they passed. The first building contained offices. Half the lights were off. Engineers in blue work jackets stood in corridors speaking quietly. Several looked as though they had not slept. The second building held machine tools, component benches, and a full-sized rocket stage resting horizontally on supports. It was narrow, white and longer than Lianhua's childhood street. She stopped beneath it. "This is smaller than I expected." A man in a scorched work jacket approached at speed. "Chairman Zhou, Miss Bai, I apologize that no one met you at the gate." His hair stood up on one side. A black smear crossed his cheek. "I'm Chen Kaifeng, chief engineer and acting general manager. Acting, Lianhua asked. Our general manager resigned last month. Why? He said he wished to spend more time with his family. Did his family have money? Chen hesitated. More than the company. Good answer. He looked at Zhou, uncertain whether he had passed something. What exploded? Lianhua asked. A first-stage engine test article. How much? The engine. The explosion. Chen rubbed the black mark on his cheek and made it larger. The hardware cost approximately 48 million yuan. The test stand suffered another 12 to 15 million in damage. Lianhua's disappointment was immediate. That's all. Chunmei coughed into her sleeve. Chen stared at Lianhua. The program has lost substantially more. How much more? Zhou said, perhaps we should first confirm that nobody was injured. Nobody was, Chen said quickly. The test bunker worked as designed. The fire control system activated. 2 technicians received minor cuts when a ceiling panel fell, but they have been treated. Why did it explode? Lianhua asked. We do not yet know. What did you buy cheaply? Chen blinked. I'm sorry. The aquarium bought cheap pumps. They failed. You are losing money, so someone bought something cheap. Our procurement decisions are more complex than that. That means yes. He looked down the length of the workshop. The turbopump assembly came from a subcontractor. Was it the best one? It was the one our financing allowed. How long have wages been late? This time, he did not look at Zhou. 6 weeks. The workshop seemed to become quieter around them. Lianhua looked at the engineers, pretending not to listen. Show me the expensive part. Chen took them to the test control room. Monitors displayed frozen graphs from the failed firing. A video screen showed the engine beneath the test tower. Flame appeared, steadied for 3 seconds, and became a white burst that swallowed the camera. Lianhua watched it twice. How much would a full rocket cost? Our Tianyuan launch vehicle costs approximately 320 million yuan to manufacture at current scale. And if it explodes? We lose the vehicle, payload launch costs, and probably the company. How much altogether? Depending on the payload, 500 to 800 million. Lianhua looked at Zhou. Now we're talking. Chen's mouth opened. Zhou removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly. Miss Bai, he said, Tianyuan Aerospace is not merely a failing factory. Launch activities involve national regulation, public safety, and strategic oversight. So it requires paperwork. Considerably more than an aquarium. Paper is cheap. Not in the quantities required for a rocket. Chen looked between them. May I ask why you are here? Lianhua pointed at the explosion on the screen. I want to know whether you can do that with more money. A young engineer at the rear of the room made a choking sound. Chen studied her face. You want us to fail. I want to purchase a business that consumes money reliably. Tianyuan is not designed to fail. Neither was the aquarium. It still managed 11 million in 1 month. One of the engineers whispered, she owns Ocean World. Another whispered back, everyone knows that. Chen heard them. His expression changed from confusion to something closer to caution. Miss Bai, our failures are not a business model. They are engineering problems. Can money solve them? Some. Can it create new ones? Frequently. Excellent. Zhou put his glasses back on. I suggest we review the accounts before Miss Bai proves an orbital disaster. The accounts occupied 4 cabinets and 1 exhausted finance director. Her name was He Min. She had worked at Tianyuan for 9 years and appeared personally offended by every number in the company ledger. Tianyuan owes suppliers 176 million yuan, she said. Outstanding salaries and benefits total 32 million. Bank debt is 640 million. We require at least 400 million to complete the next flight vehicle, assuming no major redesign. And if there is a major redesign? Lianhua asked. He Min looked at Chen. There is always a major redesign, Chen admitted. Then how much? Perhaps 800 million. Perhaps. Rocket development is not predictable. Finally, an honest industry. He Min continued. The company also faces a repayment demand from its largest private investor. They intend to petition for liquidation within 20 days. How much do they own? 34%. And the founders? Collectively, 27%. The rest? Employees, 2 regional funds and several early investors. Zhou turned a page. Tianyuan has no confirmed commercial launches. We had 3 letters of intent, Chen said. Had. 1 customer withdrew after our previous test failure. 1 satellite was delayed. The 3rd requires a successful demonstration flight. When is the demonstration? Lianhua asked. 4 months from now. And you have no money? Yes. No working engine. We have 2 development engines. 1 failed today. No paid staff. They are still working. Lianhua looked through the glass wall into the workshop. Dozens of people moved between benches. Nobody had gone home after the explosion. Why? She asked. Chen followed her gaze. Why what? Why are they still here if you don't pay them? Some will leave. That wasn't my question. He considered his answer. Because the vehicle is close. To exploding. To flying. You said the engine failed. The engine failed because something was wrong. That means there is an answer. That sounds optimistic. It is engineering. Chunmei had been quiet through the accounts. She picked up a photograph from the table. It showed a younger Chen standing beside a small silver rocket with 15 other people. The vehicle was no taller than a bus. What was this? She asked. Our first atmospheric demonstrator. It reached 37 kilometers. Did it come back? Not in one piece. Lianhua leaned closer. How much did that cost? 23 million. You were cheaper then. We were smaller. He Min placed another report on the table. The liquidation value of Tianyuan's physical assets is approximately 900 million yuan. The debt exceeds that once penalties and obligations are included. So the company is worth nothing, Lianhua said. In a distressed sale, possibly less than nothing. How much do the investors want? Enough to recover their principal, 1.2 billion. Zhou's head lifted. For 34% of an insolvent company. They funded the recent program. They are attempting to sell their loss to the only person in Jin, Hai publicly searching for one. Lianhua looked at him. Are they available today? The meeting began at 4. It took place in Tianyuan's largest conference room, which contained a 12-meter table, a scale model of the Tianyuan rocket, and no working heating. The largest investor was Jiancheng Capital. Its representatives arrived in 2 black cars and brought 6 lawyers. Lianhua brought attorney Liu. He entered alone, placed 1 thin folder on the table, and sat beside Zhou. The Jiancheng delegation noticed. Their leader, Vice President Ma Jian, smiled at Lianhua as though they were old friends who had never met. Miss Bai, Tianyuan Aerospace, represents one of the most promising strategic opportunities in the private technology sector. It exploded this morning. Development programs experience setbacks. You filed for liquidation. As a responsible fiduciary, we must protect investor capital. How much do you want? 1.4 billion yuan for our shares and creditor position. He Min had said 1.2. Zhou did not react. Attorney Liu opened his folder. Your creditor position is secured against equipment independently valued at 310 million. Your equity has no positive book value. We estimate fair recovery and liquidation at 280 to 340 million. Vice President Ma spread his hands. Book value cannot capture Tianyuan's intellectual property or strategic potential. You excluded both from your liquidation petition. That petition reflects a downside scenario. The downside occurred at 10:07 this morning, Lianhua said. I saw it from my garden. One of Ma's lawyers whispered to him. He nodded. Miss Bai, you have demonstrated an unusual ability to recognize overlooked value. Qingshui Palace and Ocean World were mistakes. Modesty is admirable. It isn't modesty. We believe Tianyuan could become your most important acquisition. That is why I'm concerned. Ma's smile tightened. We are willing to accept 1.3 billion if completion occurs within 7 days. Lianhua looked at Chen. If I pay them, do the workers receive their wages? No, He Min answered before he could. That payment goes to Jiancheng. Suppliers? No. Bank debt? No. Then why would I pay them? Vice President Ma leaned forward. Because without our agreement, we will proceed with liquidation. The company will close. The launch program will end. Lianhua looked at the model rocket between them. How much did you invest? 860 million yuan. And how much have you already recovered through interest and fees? Attorney Liu asked. Ma's lawyers became still. Attorney Liu turned one page. 312 million. Ma looked at him. That figure mischaracterizes. How much do you need to leave without losing your original money? Lianhua asked. He did not answer immediately. Approximately 600 million. I'll give you 700. Zhou glanced at her. Ma sat back. That is substantially below. And I will repay Tianyuan's legitimate debt to your fund separately at principal value after removing penalty interest. Attorney Liu slid a paper across the table. The figure was 480 million. Ma studied it. You are offering approximately 1.18 billion in total. Yes. Our price is 1.3. Then keep the exploding company. Lianhua stood. Chunmei stood with her. Zhou remained seated. Vice President Ma looked at him. Chairman Zhou, surely Gu Corp understands the strategic. Gu Corp is not acquiring Tianyuan, Zhou said. Miss Bai is. Then perhaps you can advise her that aerospace opportunities of this quality are rare. They are rarer when intact. Attorney Liu closed his folder. Lianhua reached the door. 1.2, Ma said. She turned. Wages are paid tomorrow. Suppliers receive 50% of verified arrears within 3 days. The liquidation petition is withdrawn before I sign. That requires board approval. Then call your board. And the remaining supplier arrears, He Min asked. I'll pay them after due diligence. Vice President Ma looked displeased. Due diligence may reveal additional liabilities. That is what it is for. You are asking us to accept the risk of delay. You gave the company 20 days to die. You can wait 3. The agreement was signed at 11:40 that night. At 11:58, Jiancheng Capital withdrew its liquidation petition electronically. At 9 the next morning, Tianyuan's employees received 6 weeks of wages. At 9:10, half the company cried. At 9:20, Chen Kaifeng called a program meeting and told everyone to return to work. Lianhua attended because the meeting included a budget. The main engineering hall had been cleared around the Tianyuan stage. Folding chairs filled the floor. More than 400 employees faced a temporary platform. Chen stood beside Lianhua with a microphone. Yesterday's engine failure was caused by a turbopump bearing seizure, he said. The investigation is ongoing. We will not restart testing until the root cause is confirmed. A murmur passed through the room. We also have a new controlling shareholder. Everyone looked at Lianhua. She took the microphone. How much does the best turbopump cost? Chen had not expected that opening. Imported units are unavailable for our engine architecture. We must build one. How much? With a full redesign, tooling and test program, perhaps 120 million. Do it. The room became very quiet. Chen lowered his voice. We should present the technical plan first. Is there a more expensive plan? There may be a better one. Use that. An engineer in the front row raised his hand. Chen nodded to him. Miss Bai, the launch schedule is 4 months. A full turbopump redesign may require 6. Then launch in 6. We will lose the demonstration customer. How much? The contract is worth 200 million. Good. The engineer sat down slowly. Another hand rose. Our propellant tank welding machine is 20 years old. We have requested replacement for 3 budget cycles. How much? 80 million. Buy 2. Chen closed his eyes. You need one, Lianhua said. The other breaks later. That is not how redundancy works, he said. It is how my life works. A woman near the test division stood without waiting. The blast shielding at test, stand 2, does not meet the standard we recommended. How much to rebuild it? 60 million. Rebuild it. The stand will be unavailable for 10 weeks. Good, nothing can explode there. Hands began rising across the hall. Zhou watched from the side as requests accumulated. New telemetry equipment, 35 million. A cryogenic materials laboratory, 90 million. Improved worker housing near the remote launch site, 48 million. A second emergency fire system, 12 million. Full medical insurance for all employees, 21 million annually. Lianhua approved the insurance before the engineer finished speaking. Anything that stops people dying is not optional, she said. The hands lowered. For the first time, nobody laughed. Chen looked at her. The total requested this morning exceeds 700 million yuan. Is that enough? No. Then why did you stop? He looked out at the workers. Because people are not accustomed to being asked what the program actually needs. Ask them again tomorrow. By the end of the week, Bai Lianhua had committed 3.6 billion yuan to Tianyuan Aerospace. She approved the purchase of Jian Cheng's position, cleared urgent supplier debt, funded the full engine redesign, replaced obsolete machinery, and established a 2 billion yuan flight reserve. The reserve existed so that if the first vehicle failed, Tianyuan could build another without seeking permission. When Zhou read the document, he paused at the wording. You authorized an automatic replacement rocket. Yes. At a cost of up to 600 million yuan. Yes. If the first launch fails. Yes. And if the second fails. I asked for 3. Attorney Liu said the board might panic. The board is already panicking. Then they are prepared. News of the acquisition became public before Tianyuan could repair the missing letter on its sign. The first headline read, Bai Lianhua enters private space race. The second read, Ocean World owner bets billions on China's orbital future. The third called her strategy, vertical integration beyond the atmosphere. Lianhua read that one twice. What does it mean? She asked. Zhou folded the paper. They believe you intend to connect Gu Corp's telecommunications, manufacturing and logistics businesses through satellite infrastructure. I intend to watch a rocket explode. You should stop saying that near reporters. I haven't spoken to any. They obtained the quote from an engineer. Chen, seated across the conference table, looked tired. People remember your sentences. That is their mistake. He placed a technical schedule in front of her. The redesigned engine can be ready for qualification tests in 14 weeks. You said 6 months. We hired back 32 engineers who left during the funding crisis. The turbopump team has doubled. Send some away. No. Lianhua looked at Zhou. He has become difficult. He was always difficult. He previously lacked money. The investment changed Tianyuan faster than Lianhua expected. Machines arrived by rail. Empty offices filled. The cafeteria reopened at night. Engineers who had taken jobs in electric vehicle factories returned carrying old notebooks and new children. The company hired welders, coders, machinists, safety officers, and one psychologist after Chen admitted that a large portion of the propulsion team had not taken a holiday in 3 years. Lianhua visited twice each week. She understood almost none of the technical language, but she understood fear. When engineers described a risk too casually, she asked what happened if they were wrong. When managers said a safety measure was expensive, she asked how much a funeral cost. When a schedule required people to work 30 hours without sleep, she canceled the schedule. This will delay the engine test, Chen told her. Good. It may delay the launch. Better. We have a regulatory window. Move it. We cannot move the weather. Then wait for different weather. He stared at her. You may be the only aerospace owner in the country, attempting to prevent a launch. I'm attempting to make it expensive. It is already expensive. Then why do you keep solving problems? Because that is my job. She respected him less comfortably each week. Shen Yudong learned of Tianyuan's engine failure before the public did. One of the component suppliers also served Shen Development's industrial division. Its director sent her a private note describing the failed bearing and the company's urgent funding needs. She had intended to approach Jiancheng Capital. Bai Lianhua arrived first. By the time Shen called Vice President Ma, the agreement had been signed. You sold an aerospace company to her for less than your asking price, Shen said. We recovered our principal and exited a distressed position. You gave her the patents. The patents belong to Tianyuan. You gave her the company that owns them. Ma's tone cooled. Director Shen, Tianyuan had one failed engine, no launch vehicle, and 20 days of cash. If you believed the patents were valuable, you were free to bid. Shen ended the call. Her assistant placed a market report on her desk. GU Industrial shares rose 9% after analysts linked the aerospace acquisition to advanced manufacturing. On what revenue? None yet. Then it is speculation. Yes. What does Tianyuan require that GU Corp does not produce? He opened another folder. High-temperature alloys, precision valves, flight computers, optical sensors, carbon composites, and specialized transport. Who supplies those? Several private firms. 3 are financially weak. Shen looked at the list. Buy them. Her assistant hesitated. All 3. Before GU Corp does. The first engine test, after the redesign, took place 17 weeks later. The test stand had been rebuilt behind a reinforced concrete wall. Observation bunkers sat more than a kilometer away. Fire vehicles waited along the service road. Lianhua arrived with Chunmei, Zhou, and Old Wu. Old Wu had asked to come after watching every televised report about the program. He carried a thermos of tea and binoculars. He did not know how to focus. The bunker windows faced the distant engine tower. Technicians spoke into headsets. Screens displayed pressures, temperatures, and countdown clocks. Chen stood at the main console. The firing lasts 180 seconds, he explained. If any parameter exceeds limits, the system shuts down automatically. And if it does, Lianhua asked. The bunker is rated for the maximum credible event. Explosion. Yes. How much is on the stand? Approximately 160 million yuan in test hardware. That's disappointing. Chunmei passed Old Wu the binoculars. She wanted the full rocket. Old Wu adjusted the focus in the wrong direction. One should begin with a small disappointment. The countdown reached 10. Everyone became silent. At 0, the engine ignited. Flame filled the trench beneath the tower. The sound struck the bunker as a continuous physical pressure. The windows trembled. White vapor rolled across the pad. Lianhua waited for the flash. 10 seconds. 30. 60. The engine continued burning. Chen did not move. At 120 seconds, an alarm sounded. Lianhua leaned forward. A technician called, chamber pressure stable, sensor fault only. The alarm stopped. At 180 seconds, the engine shut down cleanly. For 2 seconds, nobody reacted. Then the control room erupted. Engineers shouted, clapped, and embraced. Someone struck the ceiling with both hands. A woman beside Chen began crying into her headset. Lianhua remained seated. Did it work? Chen turned towards her. His face looked younger than it had in October. Yes. All of it. We completed the full duration burn. So nothing exploded. No. How much did we lose? He laughed. We consumed propellant worth 4 million yuan. That's not enough. The successful test changed the program. The aviation regulator granted Tianyuan an earlier launch review slot. 2 satellite companies restored their letters of intent. A university consortium asked to place a climate research payload on the demonstration flight. Lianhua refused payment for the university satellite. How much does it weigh? She asked. 86 kilograms, Chen said. Does weight cost money? Every kilogram reduces our available payload margin. Good, put it on. The mission also needs a primary payload. Put more universities on. He eventually assembled a manifest of 12 small satellites, weather sensors, agricultural imaging systems, communications experiments, and 1 student-built box intended to transmit recorded greetings from rural schools. The student box cost almost nothing. Lianhua ordered a more expensive, radiation-hardened version, so it would survive. The newspapers called the mission Tianyuan Hope. She called it the most crowded rocket in China. 3 weeks before launch, Shen Yudong's acquisitions began causing trouble. The 3 component suppliers she had purchased controlled critical orders for Tianyuan's valves, composite fairings, and optical navigation units. Each sent notice of delay within the same 48 hours. Chen arrived at Qingshui Palace after midnight. Lianhua was in the kitchen eating buns with Chunmei. The fairing supplier has moved our delivery by 6 weeks, he said. The valve manufacturer claims a quality review. The optical unit has been repriced at triple the contracted amount. Can they do that? Attorney Liu says the contracts contain change of control clauses and broad force majeure provisions. Who bought them? Zhou asked from the doorway. No one had heard him enter. Chen placed the ownership records on the table. 3 companies connected to Shen Development. Chunmei stopped chewing. The woman from the palace auction. Yes, Lianhua said. Does she want the rocket to explode? No, Zhou said. She wants it not to launch. Lianhua considered the difference. That is rude. Chen looked exhausted. We can postpone. How much does postponing cost? Approximately 110 million yuan per month, including launch site operations and contractor retention. Lianhua brightened. Postpone. We may lose the regulatory window for 6 months. That's 660 million. We may also lose the payload customers and damage confidence permanently. Even better. Chen stared at her. Zhou sat at the table. Or Tianyuan can manufacture the components itself. Chen looked at him. Not within 3 weeks. Kangoo Industrial. The valve design, possibly. The fairing requires a large composite autoclave. The optical system needs a cleanroom line we do not have. Lianhua pointed at him. You said postpone. I said we can postpone. I did not say we should. Why not? Because 400 people have spent years reaching this launch. 12 universities built payloads. The rural schools recorded their messages. The launch site is ready. That sounds emotional. Yes. Joe opened the ownership report. Shen Development purchased these businesses at distressed valuations. They may intend to force Tianyuan into long-term supply agreements. Then buy different suppliers, Lianhua said. There are none available domestically at the required standard, Chen said. Build them. That would cost. How much? He stopped. The room became quiet. Chunmei swallowed her bun. You walked into that one. By dawn, Lianhua had approved 1.8 billion yuan for an emergency component program. Gu Industrial opened 2 dormant factories. Jinhai Technical University provided laboratories. Tianyuan engineers moved into temporary clean rooms assembled inside a former electronics plant. The composite autoclave arrived by cargo aircraft from Germany at a cost that made He Min sit down on the factory floor. You could have postponed 5 months for this amount, she told Lianhua. I know. Then why didn't you? Lianhua watched workers guide the enormous machine through the hangar doors. Because Shen Yudong wanted me to. He Min waited. That is the entire reason. It became expensive. The valve team completed its first unit in 9 days. It failed pressure testing. Lianhua approved a second line. The second unit passed. The fairing emerged from the autoclave on day 12 and cracked during inspection. Lianhua ordered 2 more. The optical navigation team worked in rotating shifts. When Chen discovered 3 engineers sleeping beneath their benches, he shut the laboratory for 8 hours. Lianhua supported him. The rocket can wait, she said. You refuse to postpone. I refuse to postpone for Shen Yudong. Sleep is different. On day 19, the final component passed acceptance. The launch remained on schedule by 11 hours. Newspapers called the effort an industrial miracle. Gu Corp's directors called an emergency strategy session. Lianhua refused to attend. They will ask me questions, she said. Zhou attended instead. The board approved permanent aerospace divisions in Gu Industrial, Gu Electronics, and Gu Logistics. Analysts estimated the new manufacturing capacity could support contracts worth tens of billions of yuan. Lianhua learned this while traveling to the launch site. The train crossed dry plains towards the western coast. Tianyuan had reserved an entire carriage for engineers, regulators, and payload teams. Children from the 12 participating schools occupied the next carriage with their teachers. Chunmei had never traveled first class. She spent the first hour testing every seat adjustment and the second looking out of the window. How much are you worth now? She asked. I don't know. Joe knows. I told him not to say. That means it increased. It always increases. Perhaps rockets are too small. Lianhua looked at her. Don't encourage the sky. The Longhai Launch Center stood beside the sea, surrounded by salt flats and low hills. The Tianyuan rocket rose from its pad like a white needle against the evening sky. Up close, it was much larger than the stage in the workshop. Lianhua stood at the observation fence with Chen. How much? She asked. The vehicle, payload integration, and launch operations total 680 million yuan. And if it explodes? We lose all of it. She smiled. Chen looked at the rocket. I used to think you were joking. I'm rarely joking about money. The flight is ready. That is what worries me. He handed her a small metal object. It was a bearing from the engine that had exploded at Tianyuan months earlier. The surface was blackened and split. We kept several pieces after the investigation. Why are you giving it to me? So you remember what your money prevented. I was trying to buy more of these. No, you were. She looked at him. He did not look away. You ask the price of everything, he said, but whenever the price is a person, you refuse to pay it. That is not investment strategy. No. She put the bearing in her coat pocket. Launch morning began before sunrise. The sky was clear. Wind moved offshore. The rocket's tanks filled slowly, covering the lower stage in white frost. The mission control room contained rows of consoles and a glass observation gallery for guests. Lianhua sat between Chunmei and Old Wu. Zhou stood behind them with Attorney Liu. The schoolchildren watched from a separate hall connected by video. Shen Yudong watched from Jinhai. Her assistant had obtained a live industry feed. Tianyuan has a 40% probability of mission failure, he said. According to whom? An independent risk consultancy. 40 is not enough. He looked at her. For what? She did not answer. At Longhai, the countdown paused at 12 minutes. A temperature sensor in the second stage showed an irregular reading. Lianhua sat forward. Engineers examined the data. Chen spoke from the main console. We are holding while the team verifies the sensor. How much does holding cost? Lianhua asked. Nobody answered. Chunmei whispered, not now. After 6 minutes, the reading stabilized. The countdown resumed. At 5 minutes, the launch director polled each station. Propulsion, go. Guidance, go. Range safety, go. Weather, go. Payload, go. Chen turned towards the observation gallery for half a second. Lianhua lifted one hand. He faced forward again. The count reached 10. The engines ignited beneath the vehicle. Flames spread across the pad. Clouds of steam swallowed the tower. For one terrible second, the rocket did not move. Then it rose. The sound reached the control building as a deep vibration through the floor. Tianyuan climbed above the tower, slow at first, then faster. Its exhaust became a white line across the blue morning. Lianhua watched for the orange flash. The vehicle passed maximum aerodynamic pressure. The first stage shut down. Stage separation confirmed. Second stage ignition. The rocket became a point of light on the tracking screen. No explosion came. Mission control remained disciplined until the payload fairing separated. Then a camera showed the curve of Earth beneath the vehicle. Chunmei gripped Lianhua's arm. Look. I'm looking. You put something in space. I paid people who did. The upper stage reached orbit 11 minutes after launch. One by one, the 12 small satellites separated. The final payload was the school transmitter. Its signal reached the ground 3 minutes later. A child's recorded voice filled mission control. Hello from Longshan Primary School. We hope everyone looking down can see our village. The room broke. Engineers cheered. Teachers cried. Old Wu removed his glasses and wiped them with the edge of his sleeve. Chunmei laughed and cried at the same time. Lianhua looked at the screen. The small satellite crossed the blackness above Earth, carrying voices from children who had traveled 4 hours to see fish because she had made tickets cheap. She touched the broken bearing in her pocket. Then she remembered the cost. How much did we lose? She asked. Chen turned from his console. We completed the mission. I know, how much? The launch cost 680 million. And revenue. The university payloads were free. Yes. The demonstration contract pays 200 million after successful deployment. Her smile began to return. So we lost 480 million. Approximately. Finally. Zhou did not speak. She looked at him. Why are you quiet? The market has not opened. That is the best thing you have said all year. The market opened 40 minutes later. Gu Industrial reached its daily trading limit within 9 minutes. GU Electronics followed at 11. Tianyuan was privately held, but analysts estimated its value had increased from effectively zero to at least 30 billion yuan after the successful flight. The 3 emergency manufacturing lines received orders before lunch. A national telecommunications company requested 24 launches over 5 years. The Meteorological Bureau asked Tianyuan to bid for a constellation of weather satellites. 2 coastal provinces requested GU Industrial's new high-pressure valves for hydrogen energy projects. The composite material developed for the fairing passed a rail industry fire test and attracted a contract for high-speed train panels. The optical navigation unit found a second use in autonomous shipping. By sunset, Joe had stopped answering his telephone. He found Lianhua outside the launch center, sitting on a concrete barrier facing the sea. The rocket was gone, only the empty tower remained. Chunmei and old Wu had taken the schoolchildren to see the visitor center. Joe sat beside her. "How bad?" she asked. "Do you want the conservative estimate or the market estimate? Whichever is smaller. The conservative increase in the value of your holdings is 26 billion yuan. She closed her eyes. The market estimate exceeds 40. I asked for smaller. I began with smaller. She looked out at the water. I spent 5 billion. Approximately 5.4. I gave satellites away. Yes. I built factories in 19 days. Yes. I bought 3 rockets in case the first one exploded. You funded reserves for 3. Only 1 was constructed. That is worse. The money is still there. It is committed capital. Committed to making more rockets. Yes. She took the broken bearing from her pocket. Can we put this back in the engine? No. Why? It is broken. That was the idea. At Jinhai, Shen Yudong watched footage of the launch replay beneath every financial headline. Her assistant stood beside the television. The supplier acquisitions increased in value, he said carefully. She turned. How? GU Corp's emergency program validated domestic demand for the components sector. Our valve company received outside orders. The composite firm's land is now part of an aerospace industrial zone. Did Tianyuan use their components? No. Then why are they rising? Because investors expect broader growth. She looked back at the screen. Bai Lianhua appeared in the observation gallery wearing a plain dark coat, staring at the rocket as though it had personally offended her. The caption read, Bai Lianhua's billion yuan vision reaches orbit. Shen switched off the television. She wanted the launch to fail. Her assistant said nothing. She told them that publicly. People interpret it as humor. It was not humor. No. Shen turned towards the window. For the first time, she understood something that frightened her more than Bai Lianhua's reputation. Bai was not pretending to be unpredictable. She was unpredictable. 3 days after the launch, Tianyuan held a celebration in its main engineering hall. The missing letter had been replaced on the sign. Someone had also painted the entire gate. A full-sized photograph of Tianyuan rising above the tower covered one wall. Employees brought their families. Children climbed over a retired test article. The cafeteria served noodles, dumplings, and a cake shaped like Earth. Lianhua arrived late and tried to remain near the door. Chen found her. You are required on the stage. No. The employees prepared something. That sounds dangerous. He led her through the crowd. On the platform stood the cracked turbopump bearing enlarged inside a glass case. Beneath it, a metal plaque read, the most expensive explosion in China. Lianhua stopped. Chen handed her a microphone. The failed engine cost 63 million yuan, he said to the crowd. The decision made after it has now created a company capable of reaching orbit. Applause filled the hall. He turned to Lianhua. Would you like to say something? She looked at the glass case. You priced it incorrectly. The crowd quieted. The explosion cost 63 million. Everything after it cost more than 5 billion. People began laughing. And now I am 26 billion richer. The laughter grew. This company is terrible at losing money. The engineers applauded harder. Lianhua waited until they stopped. However, she said, the next rocket should be safer. The hall became quiet again. Not cheaper, safer. If something fails, lose the machine. Do not lose people. Chen nodded. A propulsion engineer near the front shouted, What is the budget? Lianhua looked at him. How much do you need? The hall erupted before he could answer. Zhou stood at the side of the stage, with his arms folded. Chunmei leaned towards him. She did that to herself. Yes. Are you going to tell her? No, I value my position. The celebration lasted until midnight. Lianhua left carrying a small model rocket, 3 school drawings, and a box of engine components that engineers insisted were souvenirs. On the drive back to Qingshui Palace, Chunmei slept against the window. Zhou sat opposite Lianhua in the rear cabin, reading a list on his tablet. She eyed it. What is that? New business proposals connected to Tianyuan. Delete them. There are 114. Delete them slowly. One proposes satellite internet for rural schools. She looked out of the window. Delete the profitable parts. That may be difficult. Make it free. It will strengthen GU Telecommunications. Then charge GU Telecommunications. You own it. Charge it twice. Zhou set down the tablet. What will you try next? Nothing. You have said that before. This time I mean it. You meant it before. Lianhua held the model rocket upside down. An aquarium made 1.4 billion. A rocket made 26. The pattern is getting worse. You could stop attempting to lose money. No. Why? She looked at the lights passing beyond the window. Because stopping would mean accepting the money. Because accepting the money would mean accepting the man who had left it. Because every repaired building, every paid worker, and every child who saw a penguin or heard their voice from orbit made the inheritance feel less like something dead, and more like something that had reached into her life and stayed. She did not say any of that. Because I haven't found the right business. Zhou watched her for a moment. Then he picked up the tablet. There is a company attempting to farm seaweed in the desert. Lianhua turned slowly. Why? The proposal is unclear. How much have they lost? I thought you were doing nothing. I'm asking academically. Of course. At Qingshui Palace, Old Wu had placed the launch broadcast on every television. The kitchen staff watched the replay while preparing late noodles. Workers in the Western Wing paused beneath scaffolding when the rocket rose again. At Ocean World, the night veterinary team listened to the school's satellite's first transmission over a radio. Zai Obo had recovered enough to swim the full length of the rehabilitation pool. At Tianyuan, engineers began designing the next engine before the celebration decorations came down. At GU Corp headquarters, overnight teams built forecasts around industries Bai Lianhua had not known existed 4 months earlier. She entered the private kitchen and placed the model rocket beside the backward-eyed shark. Chunmei looked at the 2 objects. The shark made money. The rocket made money. Don't put them together. Why? They may start a company. Old Wu's wife placed a bowl of noodles in front of Lianhua. The broth was hot. The chili was adequate. She ate in silence while the television replayed the launch. At the moment of ignition, the camera shook and flames swallowed the base of the rocket. For a second, it still looked like the explosion she had wanted. Then the vehicle rose through the smoke. Lianhua watched it climb again. She had spent more money than most people could imagine to create the most expensive explosion in China. The only problem was that it had gone upwards.